All right, hello everyone. We're going to give it just one more minute and get everybody connected. All right, you are at the virtual CoreNet Mega event for Designing the Future. Hopefully you're in the right place and hopefully you've enjoyed all the sessions this week. We'd like to kick it off today by thanking our sponsors. Our diamond sponsors are CBRE, DPR Construction, and JLL. In addition, given that this is quite the bizarre year, we really want to appreciate and give a big thank you to all of our sponsors of CoreNet, Diamond, Platinum, and Gold. Please take a minute and look at their fabulous logos and names. And I really appreciate all the sponsorship as we try to venture through the new normal. Our mega event sponsors for this whole event this week, hopefully you've enjoyed it, is Alfred Williams, CBRE, C Design, LS3P, McVeigh & Mangum, and Turner. And then specifically for this session, our sponsor is Alfred Williams. Just a reminder, November 5th, we have our core awards. The registration will open October 5th, and thank you to JLL, our sponsor. Oh, I lost the presentation. Am I the only one?
No, you're not the only one.
Okay. I can go ahead and introduce the panel. I can probably wing it. Oh, hold on, here we go. Let's see, there we go, great. So we have Katie Lennox, who is joining us. I think she's had a little bit of technical difficulties, so hopefully she'll get in. National Account Director and Transaction Manager at Cushman & Wakefield. She's our moderator. And then we have Irene Vogelsong, Associate Principal, Corporate Interiors Practice Leader at Perkins & Will. And then Courtney Fain, Studio Principal, Workplace Interiors at Little. And Carrie Reniger, Senior Associate Design Director at Gensler. So I'm going to turn it over to Katie and team and let you guys go from here. And oh, a little bit of housekeeping. Sorry, real quick, Katie, forgot to mention. Definitely keep your line muted and reach out, raise your hand in the chat, or type in a question. So I'll let Katie go through that further.
All right, can everybody hear me?
You're a little spotty, but we'll,
okay.
Oh, and now there's an echo, but we'll try.
All right, can you hear me fine now?
All right.
One second. Okay, thank you all for coming. My name is Katie Lennox. I'm with Cushman & Wakefield, currently serving on the Raleigh Young Leaders Committee, Programs Committee, and nationally with CoreNet Global. So see some familiar faces, some new faces. It's nice to see everyone. Today we'll be hearing from 3 industry leaders as we discuss designing for the future. Courtney Fain from Little, Carrie Reniger from Gensler, and Irene Vogelsong from Perkins & Will. The event format today will consist of a series of interactive poll questions, which the panelists will respond to and expand upon during our roundtable discussion. We encourage everybody to participate in answering those poll questions. They will show up right on your screen, and the results will be posted after each question is answered. If you have any questions or issues with the polling, just send a direct chat to myself, Amy, or Amanda, and we will do our best to figure it out. So without further ado, we'd like to get started by understanding the audience via the next 3 poll questions. So take a look at your screen. There will be 3 questions, and we'll take a minute or so to respond to those.
All right, Katie, do we have you? I see the results are up.
I didn't hit submit, but it took it away, so I don't know if mine went through. But
Oh, there they are. Okay, great. All right, so the majority agree that we miss being in the office. Some people have returned, but with scheduled days. And the most important function, the majority says culture and camaraderie. So we would like to proceed with the next poll question around our topic of culture, and then Carrie will expand on the topic of culture. So if we could pull up the next poll question. All right, I can't see the poll, so Carrie, just let me know. Okay, are we ready to pull up the results?
Results are up, Katie, and 30% say culture feels weakened, 33% say it's too early to tell. So those two are tied and close running.
Give your thoughts
Carrie,
on Amy's response.
I was going to say, Carrie, you might just want to go through with what you're going to say. I think we're losing Katie,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
I'll try to ask you really great questions.
Awesome. No, so that's interesting. In our first, we gave this panel discussion on Tuesday and got some different responses. So it was interesting to see that some people think that it's too early to tell, but a lot of people think that it's been weakened. So I don't know about you guys, but we've tried really hard to come up with ways to make sure that we stay connected and keep culture at the forefront. One of the things that we are doing is we have weekly team or studio chats. These are scheduled regularly at the same time every week, and they're for 30 minutes, and people can just drop in and out. So it's not, you don't have to be there at the beginning, you don't have to be there for the full time. Drop in and out as you're available. And I mean, the big thing is we don't talk about work during this time. So it's really our way of creating that conversation that would happen casually when you're grabbing a cup of coffee in the work cafe and you run into a colleague and you're talking to them. So again, yes, it is a little more planned, but it still encourages that connection to one another that helps the culture thrive. Another one that we are doing is, we call it the QC. And for those of you that are on the design or architecture side, you might think that's like quality control or quality check, but for us, it means quick chat. And it's something that I'm doing with my team specifically. And if you get an IM that says QC, you know that your teammate really needs to pull up for like 5 minutes and talk about something. It could be something about work. It could be they need advice about a question. It could just be that they're having like a moment and they need just to have that personal connection. So it could be both work or non-related to work. And we really have found that to be, I mean, a great way just to stay in tune with each other. I mean, of course, we're having happy hours and those kinds of things as well virtually. But again, just trying to keep that culture alive and stay connected. Irene, Courtney, I don't know if there's anything that you guys are doing with your teams that you want to share with everybody to stay connected and keep culture thriving.
We definitely
think that-
partake in the virtual happy hours and then just constant checking in on a weekly basis at a scheduled time just to get a sense, even if it's an opportunity for anybody to bring anything up. And if nobody brings anything up, then that's okay. And we try to share updates on what we're doing with business development and marketing and any exciting new news, you know, to kind of keep the momentum going while everyone's remote.
Yeah, and Carrie, we're experiencing, since I'm actually in the office today, as you can tell by this dynamic white wall behind me, but we have a blend of in the office and out of the office. And so what we're really trying to think about is how do we hold on to the culture that we've been able to create at our company, but also how can we hold on to it through this time and then emerge stronger than we were before. So we're doing a lot of the same stuff, but we're also trying to find ways to get people in the office to keep the culture alive. But obviously from a safe distance and using the balcony and all that jazz. But, and I'm assuming that Katie's still not on. So I wanted to ask you a question more about what are the design elements that you think the future workplace will need as we're considering designing the future and we're thinking about culture, what's that going to look like in application?
Yeah, so I mean, there's definitely design implications for culture and how they've been impacted during this time working from home and what they're going to look like in the future. Just to share some tidbits, Gensler's research, we found that only 12% of U.S. workers want to remain working from home full time. So that's a really small percentage of people that really want to stay working at home. While 55% of workers say collaborating with colleagues and clients is harder at home. So, you know, there's the impact. People want to come back to work. They're finding it harder to collaborate and connect. And I think that there's most certainly going to be the future of workplace is most certainly going to embrace a hybrid reality. We know this, hands down, right? And companies are starting to test a variety of ways to solve for this post-vaccine workplace. We've been really working with our clients, listening to them in every industry to understand lessons learned from our extended time working from home. And everybody's struggling right now, right, to figure out what the future is going to hold and what it's going to look like. But we're learning through our work that organizations that have created a plan driven by their values and their culture are the strongest ones coming out on top. We're seeing some common factors that are driving these client strategies. One is prioritizing the well-being of employees, which we're going to talk about a little bit more later. The other is most certainly what I mentioned before about that hybrid workplace, embracing a virtual and an in-person workplace. So providing equal opportunities for connection, no matter where you work, to ensure collaboration seamless across time and space. And then focusing on the flexibility and adaptability of the workplace. So primary focus on spaces and technology that accommodate co-creation among teams working in a variety of locations. So that, again, if I'm having a meeting with my team and three of us are in a room, and 4 people are at home dialed in, that there doesn't feel like there's a disconnect, that everything is seamless, that technology is focused to allow this, as well as the workplace types of spaces.
Yeah, and I know we need to get on to the next topic, but I think that that's exactly what, while we have some people away and some people in the office, we're making sure that we have the workplace protocols in place that even if half the people in the meeting are here, everyone takes that meeting as if it's virtual. So it is really interesting to see how that's going to be something that doesn't go away once we're back in the office, and how do you have these little micro virtual meetings when we're physically actually all back together. So Thanks, Carrie. Amanda, if you wouldn't mind putting up the next poll question. It's going to focus more on well-being. So what design elements do you believe are important in the future office as it relates to employees' mental, emotional, and physical well-being? So please check all that apply. And we'll give this about 30 seconds. Okay.
All right, so Courtney, looking at these questions and answers, any that surprise you, or what are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I always like to know what the others are. So hopefully people will put them in the chat. I think that the outdoor workspaces is not very surprising. I think the active design is a little surprising, just because I feel like I don't hear as many people talk about that, but that's really exciting to see. I think some of these are a little bit more tactical and really COVID specific, like the HVAC design and filtration. So that's more focused on reducing disease spread, using UVGI lamps in the air handling units to kill diseases and viruses. But there's a lot of more complex challenges, and so I really want to talk more about the future beyond those tactical COVID response solutions and truly the future of the workplace.
To that point, what do you see as post-pandemic environment?
The workplace's role in a post-pandemic environment, is that what you said? I see the primary role of the office going forward is going to be to connect people. Human connection really lies at the heart of human well-being, and I think that that's something that we're all realizing as we're away from people. So our corporate president of Little recently gave a presentation on the effects of loneliness. And one of the things she mentioned was a specific neuron we have in our brains, which is the mirror neuron, that allows us to build empathy, feelings of community, and shared experience. And that's just not firing right now. So if you think about how, Amy, if you were to yawn and then I were to yawn, that's that neuron at work. But we really, like, neurologically, we connect with each other. And that's something that we're really missing, that you can't really have over the screen. And so how are we going to have that connection that's then going to affect people's well-being? Because if you put a little bit of stats to it, from January to June of 2019, 11% of adults reported symptoms of anxiety or depressive disorder. And now the average is over 37%, and it's tracking higher each month. And so it's really starting to be, mental health is truly becoming an epidemic that's kind of running in parallel with the virus itself.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. You know, people need to connect, totally hear what you're saying there. So what are the design elements that you think will enhance human well-being?
I think there are going to be a couple design elements. I think some of them were mentioned in the poll, and I'll definitely want to get Carrie and Irene to weigh in at the end of this. But while anxiety and depression are way up because of the pandemic, work was really stressful before the pandemic, and it's going to be even more stressful beyond it. So how are we going to create places that reduce stress and improve mental well-being? And another thing that we won't spend as much talking about in this talk, but I think it's a whole nother topic, is also the workplace policies that we also have to have in place to reduce stress and improve mental well-being. But again, that can be mega event 2.0. So we've seen the adoption of many concepts that were around before COVID, but have really been accelerated. You think about a lot of technologies that have had a lot of exponential adoption because we've been forced to do that. I think a lot of these design principles are the same way. They're just going to be a lot more prevalent. So biophilic design principles can really promote a healthy work environment. So that's just incorporating direct or indirect elements of nature. So research has demonstrated that including these elements can reduce stress, reduce blood pressure, reduce your heart rate, but also increase productivity, and people just self-report higher rates of well-being. Another is restoration spaces. And like I said, work is really stressful. And so employees need to restore, they need to recharge. And that's another one where the policies really come into play, that if someone were to give you a yoga room or a quiet space or a focus area what are you supposed to do with it? So making sure that you train your employees and really focusing on that from an HR perspective. But when it comes to restoration spaces and biophilic design and active design, Carrie, what are you all seeing that's different, that's either different from what we were doing pre-COVID or something that's not going to be as much of a want to have, but really a have to have?
I mean, I think you're seeing the spaces, restorative spaces are being prioritized differently, right? Like before it was a mother's room or a wellness room, but now there's an increase of a variety of spaces, right? So, and also introducing suites of spaces. And I think you and Irene talked about it. I had talked about this before, the policies around how those spaces are used so that it's more acceptable, creating a culture so that employees and associates don't have a stigma about going in to use a space like a yoga studio, for instance, be it scaled differently for different clients. We're working with a client right now who they want to be able to provide those types of spaces, but also have them not just tucked into the core, but some of those spaces on the windows so that they're accessing daylight, and then they can have blackout features dependent on the activity that's taking place. So really bringing those to the forefront and making it okay for people to feel like they can use them at any point during the day.
That's a great
Yeah,
point, Carrie. Actually,
our
our Durham studio here, which is behind me in my virtual background, our mother's room is actually on the window because research shows that when a nursing mother is looking out at daylight and views, it's actually better, for milk production. But, one thing that we are seeing too is the restorative space happening within a type of workspace. So we have a client that we've been working with in Florida that, for example, we themed the focus rooms to really be that restorative space, and each focus room was themed per a different type of a circadian rhythm, different type of day. So one was more of a sunset setting, a sunrise setting, a high noon setting. So depending on how you felt that day, you could find the right focus room to go in there and, do your work and also be within a restorative space. So I think we're going to see more of that, multifunctional type of well-being space where you can also get your work done.
Okay, I love hearing that your mother's room is on a window. Obviously, you got to be real careful of the views or make sure it's a one-way window there, but that really makes a big difference. So I know we need to move on to the next topic, and we can hit on some other stuff if we have more time in the Q&A. But I think one of the last points with the well-being is just, even before we had COVID-19, workplace stress was estimated to cost employers about $500 billion annually in the form of decreased performance at work or absenteeism. So if you think about what it was before and where we're going now, I mean, there's such a business case to invest in your employees' well-being. So Amanda, I think we can move on to the next poll question. If you could also give us about a 10-second warning before you're going to take it down. That was a request from the chat. So this is more focused on innovation. So there's two here. One is strong. My company has become more innovative since we have been out of the office. How much you agree with that? And then what, if anything, has been hindering innovation at your company since working from home? So take a minute, maybe not, probably not a full minute, but take a little time, answer those, and then we can check the results and move on to the next one.
Thanks, Courtney.
Oh, Katie, we have you back.
I'm back.
Oh, good. I can stop playing moderator because I don't know what I don't know what I was going to ask, Irene.
You were doing great, though, Courtney.
Oh,
Katie, good
goodness.
to have you
Sorry, guys. You guys get my headshot, not my video, but that should suffice.
This works.
All right, let's see those poll results. Okay, great. My company has become more innovative. Most people are neutral on that one, which is interesting. And unsurprisingly, the biggest hinder to innovation seems to be lack of access to colleagues for in-person impromptu ideation sessions. So thanks, Amanda, for those poll results. So, I mean, what surprises you about these responses? And what is your take on important spatial ideas surrounding innovation that you foresee in the future of our workplace?
Well, sure. So I must say that when we asked these questions on Tuesday, most of the responses were that people did feel that their companies were being more innovative during pandemic, which also doesn't come as a surprise, right? We've all had to come up with innovative solutions to keep the work going and to keep us all productive and to try to keep us all engaged at the same time. I love the way this group responded, that the camaraderie, the coming together is one of those items that that you all feel really is hindering innovation where you work. So, you know, here's my question to all of you. Do you all believe in magic? Do you believe in magic, right? Because I believe in magic, and I believe that magic is what happens when two individuals, magic in the workplace, is what happens when two individuals that were not planning to come together to see each other happen to do so. Unplanned, shared of ideas. How are you doing? You know, impromptu meetings that tend to lead to more innovative types of discussions. So that is the one thing that the workplace does for us. It provides those spaces for socialization to occur. So back to connecting to that part of your brain where we're all connecting at a certain level. We need the socialization to happen in order for us to begin the exchange of ideas and the productive exchange of ideas. But now, to give you a true example of what I think could be a spatial solution to help generate innovation in the future, the way that the workplace is changing, I will tell you that I think we're going to see a lot more of the pop-up meeting space. Now, the pop-up meeting space as in not really what you're used to seeing, where we're talking about demountable walls that never really move because they're tied into HVAC systems and fire protection systems and they just don't go anywhere. We're starting to see a lot more response in products that allow for temporary space to be reconfigured on an even daily or weekly basis that can accommodate different sized teams. So from a 4-person team to maybe even a larger 10-person team, all within the reconfigurability of the team itself can really put these spaces together. So when we start to think about the why coming into the office, the why coming into the workplace, we think that the workplace is going to play a much larger role in a space for teams to meet up and really take care of all of the interaction and activity around creating solutions, innovating, things that can't happen when we're all working at home. And I think the pop-up space has a really important role in that. And we're going to start to see more of that. We're already studying what those options could be for some of our clients, what the product solutions are for that to happen. I think technology is going to play a major role in it, and the use of the right electrical infrastructure, the right AV infrastructure, technology infrastructure to be able to enhance all of these spaces. And I will add that for this to be successful, we need true mobility in movable furniture, in movable writable surfaces, all of this to really accommodate the different size pop-up spaces that I think are going to play more of a role into the workplace moving forward.
Yeah, that's very interesting, Irene. What role do you think technology will play in designing our future for innovation?
So I do think that for these easily reconfigured types of meeting rooms, we would have automated, digitally activated features, seamless technology that really interacts with the room that you're in, that could potentially offer a touch-free experience, and that however the space is really being used, whether it's 2-hour segments, 4-hour segments, all of this, you know, an 8-hour segment for a full day, all of this could really be handled through a corporate app. We have technology that starts to do that already. We all use reservation systems that are controlled by an app on our phone. I think these are going to continue to innovate and really start to accommodate for how spatial solutions are going to be handled in the future. So that's my response to technology. I do think that hospitality will continue to play an integral role in these types of spaces, whether they're the flexible pop-up meeting space. We would have, you know, mobile hospitality carts stocked with individually wrapped snacks and just drinks, anything to keep the employees engaged and allow, allow for them to do their best work. I'd love to hear actually from Carrie and Courtney what other ideas you might think that the future of workplace might have when it comes to fostering innovation.
Carrie, you go first.
Sure. I think like Irene, much to what you talked about seeing spaces that have walls that truly are going to be movable and flexible is going to be key, right? As we look at success, I think that adaptability is going to be first and foremost in the forefront. I also think not just having spaces inside, but outside space is going to be key in innovation as well. So that like you could have literally a platform of a meeting that you could move indoors or outdoors. We have some clients that are starting to explore that, where it's like, okay, I'm just going to take this setting and it's going to roll outside, and when we're done, we can roll back inside. And that includes everything, right? That's whatever mechanism you're sitting in, the technology and laptops that go with it. That platform just rolls out, rolls back in. So I think
Absolutely.
that flexibility, just really pushing the boundaries of what we think a collaboration space is, are going to be key.
Yeah, and just you're talking about the space moving in and out. We were having a brainstorm with a client just earlier this week since our last session about they're really big on using the Microsoft Surface Hub, which is basically video conferencing in a computer. It's everything all in one, and it's really pretty mobile. And so they're not planning for hardly any hard walls because you can kind of make video conference everywhere, and people don't want to be in hard wall spaces with a bunch of other people spewing a lot of hot air. So it goes back to one of the other things we were talking about earlier about making every meeting virtual. I think that's where technology does. And another thing that Irene, you touched on, that our conversation on Tuesday, people have said that they feel like they have been more innovative since we've been in the pandemic. And I think some of the feedback we saw in the chat and in the questions was that they feel like they just had to innovate. They've been forced to make changes and forced to pivot, the word of 2020. And so while I know that a big part of innovation is bringing people together, another point is changing the unwritten rules in your culture. And I mentioned this in the last one, but I read an article recently that mentioned the co-founder of Intuit, and he said that the biggest difference for them, and they're widely known as a very innovative company, but their biggest difference was how they make decisions. So he said that instead of decision by bureaucracy or by presentation or persuasion or really playing the politics of who's who and who's powerful, they implemented decision by experiment. And so that really empowered their employees and gave them the tools to test ideas. That's how they're remaining innovative. And it also really builds trust, which then leads to innovation and a strong culture and better well-being. So, I mean, if we're talking about what's getting to the core of everything, trust between employee and employer relationship is what's really going to flourish with all of that. And that's something that's easier said than done.
Katie, do we have you?
That's me.
Great. So that would lead me to really talk about the #1 driver for innovation. And what do we feel is the #1 driver for innovation? And this is a question that Katie asked me on Tuesday. I really felt like she was putting me on the spot, right? Like, what is that #1 driver for innovation? And, you know, everything that we've heard today, we can really talk about how important, you know, all of these things are, and that while space and proper planning and access to all these great tools that we talked about can support innovation, the one true driver of innovation is engagement. I think, you know, Courtney, what you just said is exactly that's the truth. That's the case. Engagement leads to innovation. And I have actually done a significant amount of research with Perkins and Will. I was on a team that studied exactly this for about 4 to 6 months. And we took a look at companies all across the world, really, all different kinds of companies, from technology companies, consumer companies, financial institutions. We interviewed CEOs. We looked at the different structures within their hierarchical structures within the companies themselves, and started to gauge what were the differentiators between the most innovative teams in all of these companies. And it all came down to team engagement that was due to the fact that team members on these teams, they had purpose. They believed in what they were doing. They believed in the roles that they took on within their teams. And they had trust in their companies. They had trust in their peers. So all of this to say, engagement comes from trust in one's organizations, from strong relationships between team members, from the purpose in one's role within the team, the purpose of one's role within the company. And without a doubt, the most engaged teams are the most innovative teams, and the most beautiful of spaces and access to all the best tools. It's not enough. It can help, right, the innovation to happen, for the work to happen, but it's not enough. We need engaged individuals at the heart of it all. To have that engaged individual, we need to touch upon well-being. We need to touch upon culture, as well as access to these tools and the right space types to let the work actually happen.
Yeah, Irene, I mean, what you were saying, employee engagement is core, right? And that's a part of positive culture. So it's like, culture used to be this like warm and fuzzy thing that not many leaders thought had a direct impact on their business. However, we now know that culture is one of the most powerful drivers of organizational success, right? And a positive culture has a direct and measurable influence on business outcomes, from employee engagement, which you were just talking about, and talent retention, to revenue generation and innovation capability. So culture is at the core of all of those things, right? And the shift in the workplace amplifies the need for people-focused strategies. Our innate human potential is expansive, yet it's sometimes largely untapped resource within organizations, right? So I really think that like a positive work culture enriched by the workplace enables people to flourish and be their best. They innovate, they're creative, they're successful, they're engaged. It increases their wellness aspect of wanting to be at work, how they interact with their colleagues. So it's all core to one another.
And Carrie, you mentioned this in our Tuesday call, and the word I always use is really authentic, but you were talking about humanizing. And this positive culture, I think the biggest cultural shift is that now that we've all gone through this really crappy time together, still going through this real crappy time together, we're all we have no other choice than to give like the most authentic version of ourselves, because it's just exhausting to try and put on your work mask or your home mask or your mom mask or your friend mask. But now it's just, we're all wearing a COVID mask. And so let's just all be ourselves. And so when you turn on your video and you have, a toddler running naked behind you, or your cat walks across the keyboard, it just all makes us feel a bit more connected, and it helps to build that trust and help to build that engagement so that all of these things are improving. And I think that's something that pre-COVID, we were also, trying to kind of turn on, like, this is how I'm supposed to be when I'm at work, and this is how I'm supposed to act when I'm around work people. But now we're really just being our authentic selves. And I think there's a lot of innovation coming from that alone.
Yeah, great conversation, guys. We are about 19 minutes out, so I want to go ahead and get to some questions if you guys don't mind. I think Brad had a great question, and feel free to come off mute if you guys want to talk to any of these. But he said, do you see companies that still want to use metrics, and will those metrics change with the hybrid model being the future? And hybrid model, I assume more work from home. Is that kind of where we're going, Brad?
Yeah, we're trying to figure out what those, I'm hearing echo. We're starting to track what those metrics are going to be, because I think, yes, they are going to change. And this is one of the questions that was asked on Tuesday, do we think we'll see a change in USF per person? But I think we're probably going to have to talk about what is the USF we're measuring. Is it going to be per person? Is it going to be per seat? Is it going to be per things that we aren't typically used to measuring? So how many square feet per like widget you create? What's your productivity metric? And how are you equating square feet to that? So I definitely think the metrics are going to change, but anyone who tells you they know what all those metrics are going to be, I don't think anyone could possibly know what they all are going to be right now.
And I think we're going to see a reallocation of collaborative meeting spaces per person. And there are going to be differences in that reallocation depending on what that function of that office is. For example, if you have a headquarters location in an uptown district versus a, like the hub and spoke model that we talked about on Tuesday quite a bit as well, a satellite location where employees can come in to collaborate or to use the business center or the wellness center of the company that they work for, those metrics are going to be different. The allocation of space per person is going to be different in each, depending on what those goals are for those spaces.
Yeah, and along the same line, somebody on Tuesday asked us, more specifically to the metrics, do we think we're going to see a shift in square feet allocation, like per person? So are spaces going to shrink? Are they going to stay the same? Are they going to get bigger? We had a consensus among the three of us, Courtney and Irene and I, they're not going to shrink. Space is not going to get smaller. So if you think that because you've got the mix of hybrid reality where some are working from home and some in the workplace, you're gonna reduce your real estate square footage. We aren't seeing that as a trend or something that's arising with clients. It likely will stay about the same, but the reallocation of what those spaces are used for is gonna change.
Okay, great. Another question I know that we have talked about on Tuesday, and I wanted to make sure if we had a minute we could touch on, was around well. If Courtney, if you wanted to touch on anything around the well design as well.
Yeah, so well certification is, I think it's been around since like 2014. So a lot of people are probably familiar with LEED. And so while LEED focuses on environmental sustainability, WELL focuses on really human sustainability. It's all backed by scientific research. They've put a lot into it. They've just come out with version 2. And there are some overlaps between LEED and WELL, but the biggest things about WELL is that there are a lot of things that are workplace policy and HR based. So it really goes beyond just design and construction. So a couple examples are mental health promotion and providing a connection to nature are required features of any company or landlord pursuing WELL certification. Another differentiator is that you have to get recertified every 3 years. So you can't just say we're a WELL certified space. They have to come check every 3 years to make sure you're still hitting the air requirements, the water requirements. You still have the policies, the HR policies in place, the community engagement in place. And so it really does look at the whole human being. So while I know that a lot of people didn't choose that as something they think they'll see a lot of in the future, I think that WELL is really having its moment right now. And I think there's gonna be a lot more people focusing on WELL and what that does for its employees.
That's great. Another good question that came in, specifically, Irene, for you is it looks like Debbie was impressed with the motivation and high rates of employee engagement. Do you find any companies that started with a poor company culture and found ways to engage? Did they have an idea into what steps built this engagement easiest?
So that's a great question. I think what we're going to find is that companies, a lot of where engagement comes from are things that are, as designers, are kind of out of our control. So I'll give you an example of one of the companies that we interviewed during the process of this, this research project of engaged teams are the most innovative teams as the conclusion. It was a company that it's a software and hardware company, technology company, and they had a lot of drive for innovation because they had to create new software solutions and new hardware for people to use, consumer hardware. So needless to say, there's a lot of engineers that work for this company. And when an engineer, as part of a team, when they have ideas that they want to continue to develop and research, this company had a model where there were numerous steps of approvals before getting the final approval to be able to then take that idea and research more upon it to then generate what could potentially be an innovative solution that would then make it out to the public. Well, what they found during this process is that because of the very many layers of approvals, it could take months before an innovative idea was approved to move forward to the next step. And what that ended up causing is individual fatigue for the generator of that idea, team fatigue for the team that was working with that individual to grow and develop that idea, and then a loss of engagement. And then that would lead to a lack of retainment, right? You get your talent that becomes frustrated with the different levels of management and decision making, and they're not getting the support that they need. They're not getting the pats on the back, the positive reinforcement. You know, at a certain point, they start to lose trust in the company, right? So as soon as they were able to pinpoint that these were the reasons why their teams were not being as innovative as they could be, they eliminated all those layers of approvals, and that immediately started to see a turnaround in creativity, engagement, and leading to innovation. So that's one example, and it's very specific to an actual, creation of a product solution. But there are many examples that we can all think of on many different cultural perspectives. The idea that culture comes from the top down, and what are those policies that we have in place in terms of culture or HR or management that are hindering innovation because they're causing employee disengagement. And how can we change that at the policy level?
Yeah, that's great. So I know one thing we talked about on Tuesday, and I know some companies we've discussed have experienced this, for anyone on the panel, is with work from home is becoming a little bit more siloed at home, because so many people, it kind of can give you an excuse to just sit and do your own thing. So I think, how are we collaborating, not just checking in on the well-being, which is super important. I think we've touched on that a good bit today, but how are you finding that companies and your clients are collaborating professionally?
So, I mean, one of the things that we're making sure to do is in all of our meetings, cameras are on, right? So with our teams, some clients don't want to turn their cameras on, and that's okay. We still will often turn ours on even if they don't, but especially in our internal meetings, it's always all cameras on, period. Like, it brings a human element to work from home that didn't exist when we were all in the office, right? So you see people's dogs, you see people's kids, you're seeing all kinds of crazy moments that, like, we wouldn't see. We've all talked about them on Tuesday. I don't know, two dogs running through the background, which typically happens for me, barking at each other and chasing each other, and you just see tail spinning, or colleagues who have a kid that, is interrupting a meeting because they're trying to get on Zoom and they can't find their class or they can't find their homework. It really has brought that human element. So I think just those little things like turning your cameras on are really important to help us collaborate and connect.
Yeah, and this kind of, Amy, it ties into a question that Susie asked earlier in the chat about what technology changes have you seen to support a hybrid workforce? Because I think that they're kind of tagged together. Making it clear what platforms are for what. So I know that when there was Teams and Skype, and then Microsoft bought Skype. And I mean, at Little, we were using both of them, and they were trying to make it a little grassroots, like whatever people go towards. I'm like, that actually creates more stress. It creates more anxiety. People just need to know, if I'm setting up a video conference, I'm going to use Zoom. If I need to IM someone, I'm going to use Teams.
You're right.
That if the platform has to be clear, because while you think that giving people options is just, you know, do whatever works with you and your flow, and no, that's really causing more stress, especially for newer employees who don't know, they already don't know who to go to for specific questions. If they also don't know which tools to use, that also is a problem. So being very clear on what collaboration tools you have is probably the first step in all of that.
Yeah, I totally agree. We went through the exact same thing in the middle of COVID, so totally relate to that. We're now on Microsoft Teams mostly. Just specific.
Big fan of Teams.
Yeah, specific to technology. Any other questions? I know we've had a few people have dropped, and I know that we had a few little technology hiccups, so apologize for that. But any other questions? We do have a few minutes, but if not, we can give you some time back and just kind of do our thank yous, but just wanted to check real quick.
Yeah, and thanks for bearing with me with my technology issues. But I wanted to echo your statement earlier, Amy, about our huge thanks to our sponsors. We know virtual programs are maybe not everyone's first choice, but we really appreciate everybody dialing in and being part of a great mega event this year.
And happy birthday, Katie.
Thank you.
What a fun way to spend that birthday.
I'm gonna go find some better Wi-Fi for my birthday.
All right, thank you guys.
Great dialogue. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining.
Thanks. Bye.
Hi, everyone.
Oh,
Thanks, y'all.
thank you. Good program.
Appreciate it.